Order. Thursday, June 29, 2017, 6:30 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all for joining us. And for the, obviously, the move of the meeting from Monday to Thursday today, due to a technical difficulty and glitch with the system, leaving us like a couple hours short of having a potential open meeting violation law, so we had to move the meeting till Thursday. So I really appreciate your time and efforts, and Holly, thank you for squaring that away. Meeting minutes for 6/12/17.
Just a note on those, I did update them.
You did?
Yeah, after
Okay.
you recessed till the next day, I added that on the bottom.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's just kind of a technicality, but I don't know if it's an issue or not. These minutes state that Julie was absent, yet down in the votes it says she abstains. I don't know how you can abstain from a vote when you're not present.
Is that in the second section on the 13th?
On the 12th, so yeah, like, section 3A.
Oh yeah, maybe we better push these to the next meeting and I'll fix that.
We can approve the minutes subject to that change. We don't have to table it, correct?
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of Monday, June 12th with the correction to section 3A.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second.
I'll second.
A motion, second, any other discussion? I see none. Cameron?
Yes.
Julie?
Abstain.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Good catch, Doug. Introduction of new employees, Mr. Tenzini?
Alan, would you like to introduce?
Yes, for the board, Joe. This is Joe Sangster. He's our new employee for the Buildings and Grounds Department, working with, doing your public, landscaping grounds like the cemeteries and your parks and also your buildings. So this is Joe, and he just came on board about a week and a half ago.
Right.
He's our,
Welcome aboard, Joe.
he's our summer seasonal,
Summer season.
our short-term seasonal.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time and
You're
efforts.
welcome.
Welcome. Yep.
I'm gonna pass over Bravo. And we'll re-engage the advisory committee with another meeting. Representatives of the NPO?
I would defer to Alan on this item.
Okay.
Good evening.
Evening.
We got a letter from the MPO, which is the Massachusetts Planning Organization. What they do is they recommend your DOT mass tip list. So there are representatives from each town that's in the district in order to get their votes represented. Templeton's representative was John Columbus when he was on the board. So right now Templeton does not have a representative to do that. It's important. We have Royalston Road on the Mass DOT tip, trying to get it on the tip list and get it going. We are possibly looking at Bridge Street to go on that same type of program at some point. So it's really important that we have a board of selectmen member.
I would volunteer for that.
You don't have to get on the MPO.
I'd like to volunteer for that.
You would?
Just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, this is for the sub-region, for Templeton, Winchendon, Air, some few of the other communities. There's no one representing right there, so if we get a couple folks that throw the name in the hat, then the MPO will have to decide how to settle that. But getting in there with a potentially interested party, if we can land one of those seats, is very important. The director's really spot on in trying to keep us front and center on this.
Right.
So is that a suggestion for multiple?
Would that be suggested for multiple?
Well, there's multiple towns, but only one representative, so I would suggest that you simply submit one name of interest.
Okay. All right, so one name of interest will be Julie. Okay. Anything else, Alan?
That's all. When they have an MPO meeting, I will touch base with
Contact
you.
me.
We'll go down together. on the
Great.
resolution.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, she'll need an appointment letter, I'm assuming?
Yes, and we'll get that out sometime next week.
Okay. Annual appointments?
Just a no on those, Sharon.
Say that again?
Under the Cable TV Advisory Committee, there's a highlighted name, Marcia Breen.
Yes.
I actually haven't heard back from her yet, but Steve Castle assures me she wants to be on it, so it's up to you if you wanna vote for that now or put that one off until July 10th. Everyone else on there has said yes, they wanna be reappointed.
Why did I say before that I had to? Remember I had given it to Cameron to.
You have to recuse yourself from the election workers list.
Oh, okay,
don't recall.
okay, yep, you're right. So I would make a motion to approve the appointments as stated in the list, number 4D, which I would like to be posted in the town clerk's and the selectman's office, and to include Marcia Breen
Okay.
on the Cable TV Advisory Committee.
All right. Motion, have any, so second?
I'll second.
Motion is second, any discussion?
Just wonder,
Yes.
Templeton Developmental Center Committee, there's only one, and I had volunteered for that committee way back. So I'm just,
Which one's that?
TDC. Reuse Committee. No.
That's one Cameron's on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was 2 appointments on there. When I signed the paperwork, I remember seeing her name on there.
Okay.
The school budget subcommittee's not on here, correct?
No, I took it off.
Okay,
Oh.
So we have to decide that later.
It'll be
Because she texted me today too, and asked if.
On the Templeton,
Developmental Center?
yes.
Julie's on it through 2018.
Okay, she's already on it.
It was a 3-year appointment. so
Three-year
she's all
appointment,
set
okay,
for
these
that.
are only
Oh, so I'm
reappointments.
already still-
Yep, you're
okay.
already on it. Thank you. Okay, I have motion second, any discussion? I see none. Cameron?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Can I make some added commentary? I didn't really want to, about the list itself, but that Holly
Yeah.
and I had trying to put together, there is a full list where, you know, like I said, where Julie would already be on there and some other names, but we also wanted to put, she has one where there's phone numbers and emails and also what statute how they are put together, and that's a process. So that can be sent right, Holly, like, once we kind of, get through the rest of that list. That's all, just a
Okay.
commentary.
Okay. So you're working on
Yep.
putting together
already
all the
has-
statute?
Yep, so the list that you see here is just the names and that, but there's a much larger Excel spreadsheet that's, there's two of them, and one is older than the other, and she was trying to like merge them together, and it's just not possible to put all that information together. And again, you have to look up which, statute,
Right.
as far as who's supposed to be on the committee, what the makeup of that. But yeah, she was working on that, but there's just a lot of other priorities at your end. So.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. Otter River Sportsman's Club, the one-day license for Friday, 6:30, 17 at 5.
He's not here. These are the same as the ones that we did a few weeks ago. He
Mhm.
just had a couple additional, events. And he's in compliance with everything he needs to be.
Okay, so the two additional days are Friday, 6:30, and July 8th from 1 to 11? Okay. I just didn't,
One's a for-profit and one's a non-profit. That's why they're on separate forms.
can I make a motion to approve the one-day liquor licenses for the Otter River Sportsman's Club for June 30th from 5 to 11 and July 8th from 1 to 11?
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second, any other discussion? I see none. Cameron?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Julie?
Do you have the originals?
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes
To
as well.
sign.
Oh, go on, give them over. Let's steal it back from
You wanna wait till the end to pass it on?
Given that we're gonna have a non-public, that's probably the best thing to do. Given we're gonna have a non-public, it's probably easiest to distribute this during that. Just afraid.
Open space, plan submission to the state.
Howdy.
How we doing?
Good, thanks.
Right, good to see you again.
Nice to see you. The last time we were here, we had presented to you our draft plan. It's a huge document, I know. We've since followed up with additional work, which is setting the priorities on that list of what the community had indicated were the open space priorities for the town. So we want to move the process forward. In order to do that, we want to find out if you have any feedback, anything that you would like to see us incorporate, any changes or edits. We are also, the plan has been submitted to the planning board and to the conservation commission. They are now reviewing it, and we expect to get, that will be on their next agenda items for their approvals or edits. I am meeting with MRPC tomorrow, John Hume, because MRPC also needs to review it and write a letter of support, at which point we will, provided you vote to move it forward, submit it to the state so that a draft plan has been submitted. The timing on this is important to be done prior to our submittal of the land grant, which is our next agenda item, which is due third week of July. So if, and so the remaining activities we as a committee have to do is to just finalize the ADA accessibility report. We have a copy of the report that was done for the town several years ago, and we're just collating that to include into the submission, and there's really no form changes other than that. So if you, as a board, were willing to vote approval, to submit, once these steps are completed and to provide, approval for the chair to sign it, we could avoid coming to you again for another request or take whatever advice or, direction you wish.
Okay. So as you stated, planning has it, and as well as conservation to go through it as well.
Yeah,
And if they recommend changes,
we have not heard any as yet.
We'll be meeting next week, with the planning board. Week after next.
He introduced it to him at the last meeting, and then it will be on the next agenda item, that's planning. Similarly with conservation, speaking to both our planning and our conservation representatives on this community preservation committee, we have no indication that there's any changes necessary, but of course, we would, if you wanna vote contingent, obviously, if it changes in form, then any vote you take would need to be revisited. If it doesn't change.
right, I'm aware of that. My concern is that, we're gonna potentially vote for something hasn't been fully vetted through planning and conservation. So that would be my only concern. I don't know what my fellow board members think, but I'd like to hear some information from them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So by approving this, what exactly are we setting ourselves up as a community for in the next 7 years? What is the initial target goal of this 7-year plan? And I guess part 2 of that question would be, if we don't approve this, what does that mean for Templeton?
Well, to start with, if we don't approve it, we don't submit it, then we are not eligible for any of the grant funds that are available to communities who have a current and approved plan. We have gone through 2 iterations of this process, so 10 years. The submittal is a guidance document similar to a master plan, not exactly the same, but quite similar in that it gives ideas of what is important to the town. Much of the document is boilerplate describing the town, the community, so it's a good resource available for those learning about the town and its, its geography and its ecology, etc. One of the primary priorities that have been identified is to move forward on finding, expressing concern that the lands at the former Templeton Developmental Center remain open. You'll see that amongst the priority lists is to determine an action plan to protect or acquire Farrell Corporation lands. That ties into that next item on the agenda. We talked about a lot of different things through the community meetings, how it would be nice to have connecting trails and parks and communities within the villages, making sure there's recreational opportunities. There's no binding, there's no money associated with this, there's no commitments other than it shows that we've gone through the process of getting the public's feedback, putting it together in a document that meets the Division of Conservation Services format, then they review it and approve it, and then we have it on file, and then this is our plan for the next 7 years. It has a 7-year action plan, and the goal is, to continue to address these things. Many of these issues were just improving communication, talking to the different boards and the townspeople going forward. So it's really available as a resource. It doesn't commit any funds, nor does it commit us to taking any other actions. It just gives, an indication of what we feel is important in terms of open space and recreation in the town of Templeton.
So it's not a formalization of any, for reference, I think there was an energy thing that we wanted, a green community where we had to.
Right, it does not satisfy.
Here to some constraints and requirements. So this isn't of that, this is kind of formulating a plan of what we want to do for the next 7 years, which would be to preserve open space and compliance with the
Yeah, and also to
master.
address recreation needs within the town. And of course, everything has a price tag. You'll see on the priority, on the fund, there is a funding source listed. These are potential avenues for funding, many of which are volunteer efforts.
Right.
Is there any time sensitivity? I mean, is there a deadline for submission that we're, running up against real quickly or anything like that?
Yeah, the land,
Yes.
for the next item, without having some of this, they can't move forward with the, grant proposal.
I believe you
For the,
mentioned that at the
for
last
the
meeting, how time
Templeton
sensitive this was.
land.
And our last plan actually has expired, so we're
Yeah,
in
they're
open
in the-
space limbo right
Right.
Doesn't sound like a very fun place.
So, yeah, so the, as Diane indicated, the Massachusetts Local Acquisitions for Natural Diversity, or the LAND program, requires that you have at a minimum if you don't have an approved plan on file, that you have a draft plan submitted to the state. So this would satisfy the submitting the draft plan to the state. The article that the agenda item we're gonna speak to next is that proposal. We were hoping to have that finalized for you tonight, however, we're still waiting for the final appraisal to put the dollar figure on there. So we're not gonna ask you to vote on that tonight. But we have 3 weeks to get that submitted. So we just are, and so we do have at least one more of your meetings, I believe, to address this again, and to if that's what the board is comfortable with.
7:10.
But
When
at
do
that
you have
point, it
to-
does become.
So we would have a meeting on July
Scheduled
10th,
then.
and when would you submit that, John?
I believe it is due the 21st.
Okay, so the planning board and the conservation would have met already, right?
Planning board will have that.
So you have reviewed this as well,
Yeah,
It'll be on the agenda for their vote
now. Monday.
to approve it.
this Monday?
so we'd have to check with George to see whether they actually voted to approve, but they have had it to review as well.
Okay.
Well, in my opinion, if we vote tonight, it would have to be contingent
Yeah.
upon both planning board and conservation not making any changes. If either of those make a change,
And it's coming
then we
back
would need you to
anyway.
come back and tell us what those changes are and why they would
see
recommend
any.
those changes. So any vote I would support would be contingent upon those two boards not making any changes to the existing proposal.
Okay. You see where I was going with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think if we, I read through the booklet that I took and this, and I don't do this every day. So, I didn't see anything glaring. It's stuff that we've done before, and to be able to move forward with others, but people who are, like the planning board and the conservation, who look at more of this all the time, I would prefer to see that, even if we had to have a special meeting to do this, I would rather see if the other boards have changes before we say, and that way it would all be cinched up together. We would sign, they would have already signed, and then, so if we don't say yes to this, we're not voting on your next agenda item anyway, but then maybe by then we would have that all planned out together by the 10th? And again, if it was done before that, could we, next week is with the holiday, and
It would be unfortunate, though, if they felt the same way, that they wouldn't want to vote on it until the selectmen made their decision.
yeah, so we would
It'd be
have to
a-
make it subject to, is that what you're, so
I think,
it's gonna come,
I think Doug's suggesting that you would vote on it with the exception of any changes, assuming that they wouldn't make a change, then
okay. It's gonna be subject to that, so,
I can make the motion. So I would make a motion that we
can you
approve,
just make sure that
the
on July
plan,
10th we know?
contingent upon the planning board or conservation making any changes. If they do, then we need to come back and understand what those changes are. But if neither of those boards make a change, then we're good.
And it would be the chairman of the board who
To sign.
signs the document? Yes,
Yes.
then you need to add that
And
to your
chairman of the
motion,
board will
please.
sign.
Okay, a motion of a second?
Second.
A motion second, any discussion? Will?
Yes, just a question through the chair. Would this be just open space, or would it be open space and maybe at some point as recreation? As
It's both, Will. It's both.
for both, because
Both.
I would like to take it, end up seeing some hiking paths within the community, since we got some large parcels here. It'd be
Absolutely.
beneficial for the community.
Absolutely, you're absolutely, that's what you guys are working on, correct?
Yes, and so we
It's
do
in
have a
here.
copy of the plan. We've had some public meetings, and we have specific items in there I can give you a copy of the action items, but it's specifically to have hiking and, trails in the community, each village has its own character. So I think,
Thank you.
you know, you'll find that it's incorporated in there, and I agree it's important.
Absolutely. I have a motion, a second, other discussion? I see none. Cameron?
Yes.
Julie?
Abstain.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you. So we will keep the process rolling and let you know of any changes. As soon as we have the feedback from those other boards, we will let you know, you, Holly, Carter.
Okay, your next subject here, open space grant, land acquisition at the TDC.
Yeah, so as we have also discussed, and I don't know if you have a copy, yeah, I see Diane has the map right there, the Templeton Developmental Center lands that have been, so it should be in your packet. These are the lands that were determined by
It's on the back side.
Land Court to be the property of the Farrell Corporation. We are seeking to submit a proposal to the state Land Acquisition and Natural, whatever, Diversity Program, LAND program, to secure funding to purchase parcels B, C, D, and F. Those represent approximately 102 acres. The project will require a conservation restriction, as would any open space procurement through the state. The objective is the Department of Fish and Wildlife to hold the conservation restriction as they have on our other similarly acquired lands off of Dudley Road. The land would then be available for open use, passive recreation, and, you know, other activities as defined by the restriction. The discussion is also ongoing with Fish and Wildlife to secure Lot A, which represents the larger piece, 365 acres. The hope is that it has been brought to their land committee. They have evaluated it as of being of interest, but no funding as yet. We have had an appraisal contracted, but, it's not complete, so it does not have the dollar figure. The way these grants work is whatever the appraiser sets as the value as determined by the prescribed process is therefore the purchase price. It's not a negotiated price from them. If a purchase and sale and agreement is entered, is come upon by the landowner, and the townspeople had voted it in a special town meeting, which would be, you know, in the fall's town meeting, and the grant is approved, the town would buy the land, and then we would be reimbursed from the state 70% of the cost. So the town would be able to purchase, because of the formula, you can get up to 70% from the state. So whatever the price would be, we would have to come, let's say it was $100,000 for easy math, the town commits the $100,000, the grant has been approved, the townspeople have voted it, and when the sale closes, the state reimburses 70% of that purchase cost back to the community preservation funds, which would be the source, and therefore we've only paid 30% of the cost. So, like I said, we're not ready to submit that. You have a copy of the application form.
Can I ask
In
a
your
question
packet.
before we move
Yeah.
on? You first said that there's an appraisal done and the appraisal becomes the purchase price. And now you just talked about negotiating a purchase price with the seller.
No,
Which of those?
there is no negotiation.
So
There
the-
still must be a purchase and sale.
Yeah,
It's either, here's the price, take it or leave it. Obviously, it's their land still. They can say, we think it's worth more than that, or we don't wanna sell it.
right. So the appraisal comes at 120, but the seller says, I'll sell it to you for 100. So 100 is the price, not 120?
No, whatever the appraisal is.
Whatever the appraisal
Okay,
is.
so even if the landowner wants to take less, you still have to pay the appraisal price.
Or he could take a tax deduction as a beneficial sale.
Okay? But he could ask more than what that.
He could ask more and we could not pay it.
All right, I understand that. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah. So the grant process is fairly, or the application process is fairly simple. You have a copy of that. But one thing that is required is that a municipal project manager be identified. This is the person who will be the day-to-day contact for the project and who will represent the municipality in communication with DCS, Division of Conservation Services. We have drafted a letter for that. That is one thing you could vote, whether we submit this thing or not. You could vote, I am willing to be the representative for that. It would be for both the proposal and should the grant be awarded, would be the, when the project goes forward. If you would rather have somebody else in that role, that is also, your purview. But if you are interested in, that's something, and then it would be a letter from the chairman indicating that this person, and if it is me, is the authorized representative. That is a requirement of the grant application process. So yes, we're not tying it up in a nice, neat bow, because we still have to come back and ask you for the approval to submit. So that could be done at that time as well. I just want you to know that there's 2 votes on this to go forward. One is to appoint a representative, one is to actually submit it, the application.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So on this map, I noticed there's a key on the bottom left.
Yes.
Town purchase and the Mass Wildlife. Since it's in black and white, I can't differentiate what we have currently as the town purchase and what's Mass Wildlife. Or is there no difference? Are all these lots?
What we are proposing, or what we have discussed in this, what we are proposing is lots B, C, D, and F.
Okay, so then Lot A would be.
Lot A is what we would hope, and that is not in our control, of course, that Mass Fish and Wildlife would purchase through their programs. They get a fixed budget every year to buy land for their uses, which is promoting fish and wildlife.
Now, all this land is protected currently, right? It's protected
No.
lands where they cannot develop? It's protected farmlands?
It is, none of this is protected, because when the protections were put forth in legislation in 2002, the Acts of 2002, Senator Brewer sponsored, they put protections on this land, assuming that the state owned it. When it was resolved in court that these specific parcels were not the property of the state, they had no authority to vote this protection. So those were all rescinded as part of the settlement. So there is no protection on any of these lots.
Okay.
The surrounding land is.
The surrounding land remains the property of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the fields portions do have that protection as delineated by the Acts of 2002.
So your fear is that this land here will be developed?
It is subject to whatever the landowner wants to do with it. Much of these parcels there is a lot of moisture out there, so I can't say what's buildable and what's not. Obviously, the 100 acres we're talking, certainly, and this is the residential 5-acre lot zoning. So the maximum, even if all 100 acres, and I don't know exactly how it breaks out, but you could have 20 houses. That's not realistic because, for example, Lot D up on South Royalston Road or Route 68, there's a lot of wetlands up there, and so, would it be developed? Who's to say? Or whatever, mined, farmed, whatever the landowner wants to do, that's their.
Understood.
So
Okay.
really, the important thing to know is that this has not been brought to the townspeople yet, but the timing of these proposals are such that we need to submit this grant application. Now, grant applications are submitted either with prior town meeting approval or without. It's better to have town meeting approval going in, because they say, oh, they've already got their money lined up, this will be good to go. That's not what we can't do that, obviously. If this should be approved, we still have to come to a town meeting vote to appropriate the funds, which we are identifying would be community preservation, open space funds for the purchase.
Okay.
So, clearly, unless you tell us never to come back, we'll be back again the next time.
Well, that will never happen. Yes, well, you have a question?
Just a question. Is this land subject to taxation because it's owned other than by the state, or?
So
Because
this,
it's a nonprofit, they don't pay taxes? Because once we take it, if it's taxable, once we take it off the rolls per se, we won't be able to take and tax that land. That's my question.
Yep. Go ahead.
Does it impact financially to us, one way or the other?
the land was only, so the nonprofit corporation is a 501c3, which would make it eligible for no tax. However, the Board of Assessors' position has been that they have not fulfilled their 501c3 obligations within the town, and so they did send them a tax bill, and that is something you'd have to talk to the Board of Assessors as to where that stands now. I know there's been some discussion as to where that will go going forward. You know, so you are correct that since it's not the state's land, or is it the town's land, it would be subject to taxation, if, indeed, that tax exempt status was proven to be, you know, in place. So I can't really speak to what's gonna happen on that.
Okay.
Do you know anything about that?
Would they be able to get, Chapter 61 status anyway?
Certainly, you know, if they were at the point where they would be considered taxing. So that they receiving a tax bill was, you know, a surprise to them, I believe.
Yep.
I can't speak for the process,
Right.
but just anecdotally hearing. They are an organization that has been intertwined with the facility and the other Fertile State schools across the Commonwealth for over 150 years. It's a 150-year-old corporation that has always had a mission of supporting the mentally challenged, or whatever we're supposed to call it now. You know, it's changed, but, you know, those institutions have been closed, seeing as the federal government has indicated institutions are bad, group houses are better, so, you know, the state chose to go in that direction. They were shown to have purchased this land with monies that were separate from the monies that they were getting in partnership with the state. It's my understanding of the history that before there was even a, you know, Department of Mental Retardation, you know, they were doing stuff on their own as a charitable organization for decades and decades, and eventually became a state institution. The state just assumed everything they had was theirs. They had separate records that showed for these parcels. These other lands co-evolved with donations to that same mission of supporting the developmentally challenged. And so here we are today. The facility's been closed for 4 years or so. You know, the group homes are up there and other things are happening. This land went through land court. They were shown to be the owners. They had to, you know, so what they're gonna do or how they're responding, I think they are kinda a corporation that may, who knows what'll happen, I don't know.
I'm following with Diane. I mean, if you've been around for over 150 years, you would think if it was a 501c3 that they would have their paperwork on top of, all set and ready to go, especially with that long of a duration here in the Commonwealth. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I guess we'll have to talk to Luann about that or get more information from the assessor concerning that. Wow, I didn't know they were sent the bill, but thank you for bringing that up.
I wasn't really going anywhere with that, except that, okay, so this is my opinion. As much as we want more funds on the tax roll, this is some beautiful land there, and beautiful land. And it was Senator Brewer's mission to preserve that. You know, what is the saying that God's only making so much land? Personally, I don't want to destroy that. The Department of Wildlife and Fisheries is there. I think that our community preservation does a good job. I don't even want to assume the seller is aware that you would, is this gonna be a surprise to him that you want to purchase 100
No,
acres? So I guess I'm gonna ask you, how receptive are they to wanting to do this, or depending on what the price comes in, I'm gonna do something else. If there is a lot of wetland and you do have the 5-acre rule, you can only put 20 houses, and that's lovely. But there are other challenges on that property.
Oh, no doubt.
So, I mean, I would prefer to see this move forward and protect some amazing property.
And I'm in total agreement as well. As my concern would be is if there was a bill sent out and it was not paid, and the town has to, we have the option to purchase it, and now there becomes a lien on that said property because of a non-tax paid tax bill, that's what I was trying to get to. I wanted to make sure all that stuff was cleaned up prior to any type of, P&S signed by anybody concerning any type of land. Because again, if there is a lien on the property, obviously the new purchaser would have to be responsible to pay the lien. Yes?
So if there was a lien on the property.
Yeah.
And I will assume that this is like any other, purchase, that property could not close because a town takes precedent over a mortgage, it would have to be paid off with the sale because we would not get clean title
Right,
to that
exactly.
property. So entering into the transaction, even if it didn't stipulate that, when they do the title to the property and they'd be like, oh, there's a mechanic's lien, there's a Liz Pendens, it must be paid off.
Understood.
So
Okay.
I would hope that whomever they are, I don't want to assume it's a he or a she or whatever, that would have to be, well, I don't
Take
know
care
who
of
the owners are,
Right.
so I hate to use that term.
Absolutely.
That would have to be done, and maybe
Right,
John knows
yeah.
more about that.
Thank you.
Just weigh in on that. It is a requirement, as Diane stated, that the taxes would be paid and they would be paid at closing. So the proceeds of the
It would-
sale would be reduced by
Right,
whatever the
correct.
tax bill is.
Yep.
So it's a seamless transition.
Okay, good.
You know, and that's something that, you know,
And that's normal.
Great, I'm good with it.
That's normal.
The other question regarding to their knowledge of this, so we have met with Mr. Tom Frayne, he is not a trustee, he's affiliated with the organization, so he can't speak for their board. They are aware that we are going forward with this, they, you know, have met with the assessors about the tax
Good.
situation. So as soon as we get that figure, and I apologize for not having it yet, then they will know that that's an option for them. So the process of going through this application is, you know, it's deadline driven to get it in there. It is no commitment to do anything, even if we are granted the award, you know, we still have to have a town meeting
The
vote, and you
townspeople.
could still deny putting it on a warrant, for example.
All right.
So you could wait to have us come back and talk about both items that you'll need to vote for when we're ready, at your next meeting, or you could vote the, appointment of me or
Yeah.
someone else as the municipal project manager tonight.
Okay.
I think that John Henshaw is the appropriate a person to represent this. He does a great job. I don't even have to say, I appreciate all that you and your committee do. So I think doing the appointment would allow him to feel like he can move
Understood.
forward, and that you will have to come back for the submission because we don't have a number, but I would like to make a motion to approve the appointment of John Henshaw and the authorization for the day-to-day contract for the land grant communication.
Okay, I have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Thank you very much. Any other further discussion? I see none. Cam?
Yes.
Julie?
Abstain.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Good luck.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,
Everything.
Carrie. It's nice to see you. I should have brought a winter coat. I never say I'm cold.
And then,
Yeah.
Bring up that next item. Table it.
Oh, I see. H?
We only approved the appointment.
I'm gonna table it. I'm just
No,
gonna.
no, 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 bring it up.
Letter, but they're coming back for the other piece, yep.
Okay, there we go. Action on BOS members to attend advisory committee meetings.
Yep. I motion to table that indefinitely.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? See none. Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Cam?
Yes.
I vote yes. Action on budget transfers for FY17 requests. Mr. Tanzini?
Sure. We were able to, this morning, take a squint at where we are. We have one payroll left and we have 2 accounts payable left. I have 2 transfers, one new one, one is a revisit. The first one is for snow and ice. The year-end deficit, after going back through and checking all the postings and making sure everything had been properly charged, is $131,800. We are requesting that you initiate submitting this to the advisory committee. We've been through the different salary accounts where we can get this, and have provided the advisory committee in this document with an explanation of why these funds are available as they are. I'm happy to address any questions, but that is what our request is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Denzine.
And so if we do not approve this, this comes down onto the recap sheet.
If you do not approve this, and if the advisory committee does not subsequently approve it, it goes on, you raise it on the recap sheet, and you can't just add it, because you're still constrained by the limits of Prop 2.5, so that when you add that, you would have to find corresponding cuts in the fiscal 18 budget that you would present to the fall town meeting
So
to
effectively,
offset this being raised as a revenue.
so
on the
effectively, we
recap.
have the funds in other budgets now to take care of this deficit. And if we
Transfer.
don't, we'll have to take budget cuts in fiscal year 18, if we add it to the, or raise it on the recap.
Yes, I
Okay.
mean, if you were in a different situation in future years, some towns use their planned and known free cash every year. They set it aside. So this fall, when you see what your free cash is, you might actually go through a mental planning process of, okay, we're gonna take X and set it aside for the spring annual. But in this case, the only certain action that you could take is most likely to be cutting the budget by this $131,800.
I motion to approve the budget transfers?
Motion, have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion concerning the transfers? I see none. Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Yes.
Cam? And I vote yes as well.
The second transfer was previously approved, and we've been asked to resubmit it, so I thought the best thing to do was to take a subsequent action, so that there would be no confusion over your reauthorization. These are the funds for town council expenses, and we've shown you where those would come from, and in the memo that we put together, you saw this previously.
Right.
Under a different date, explained why those funds are available for transfer.
And we already voted on this?
You did, but we've been asked to resubmit it, and I just thought that it was prudent to ask you to reauthorize it.
Okay, I understand. So I'll need a motion for the original request for the highway, for town council being paid by wages of the highway.
I motion for?
So what's the total?
Okay.
10,000.
Do I have a second?
Same, nothing's changed.
Okay.
It's the same request as last time, Mr. Chairman. Nothing's changed. We have asked, there are some items in dispute, which we advised you of previously.
Yep.
We've advised council of our intent to not pay for those and asked them for a courtesy
Understood.
credit on
Yep.
those. And we do have, this is a partial billing, it's through the 19th, I think.
Okay, so I have a motion, I
So
have a
we have a
second.
week or two. Litigation can drive some of that, but I think we can cost allocate those to their you know, whatever department's driving that demand, and I think we can squeak through.
Okay, okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, second. Other discussion concerning this? I see none. Cameron?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may I comment on the transfers?
Sure.
I would just like to commend the staff and this board. There was, as you know, we entered the fall town meeting with a budget that was out of balance by about $200,000. We've had a pretty heavy snow and ice deficit outside of the norm for a number of reasons. But this board, through some painful decision-making processes.
I hope you're not looking at me when you say that.
No. These are not easy decisions. I mean, they truly, I could see it, you know,
When
on
you use the
people's
word process?
faces. This was a painful process. You know, the staff as well, in some areas, took cuts or took on extra work with some vacancies either created or not filled speedily. Some great restraint on behalf certainly of the police department. You know, extended shifts were not covered. The extra training that we like to do to keep everyone at the top of their game were deferred. To squeeze this much out was not pretty, and it wasn't easy. But I really think that the staff and this board are commended for getting through this year as you did, without any. There wasn't any real sort of slash and burn. Nothing was easy, but there was not a lot of slash and burn, and there was no permanent damage done to the organization. I just wanted to commend the board and your staff.
Thank you so much.
And you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, action regarding response to the open meeting law complaint of Jay Farrell. Do you want me to read this, or?
At your pleasure, Mr. Chairman, we went through it at some length. I've always sort of taken the position that because these are appealable to the Attorney General's office, and they're going to essentially get the complaint and the original complaint in your document, that we need to try to make them as complete so that they stand on their own. Happy to respond to any questions. Happy to read it if you wish. But subject to any drafts, I would encourage the board to settle upon a response tonight and get that signed so we can get that out Wednesday morning. We do file a copy of it with the petitioning party, a copy with the municipal clerk, and we send a copy to the Attorney General along with the original complaint. I did not attach the original complaint because I think that everyone had seen it. No, we did, I guess. Holly did.
She did.
Include some of that. Okay, my mistake, I'm sorry. Whether you read it or not, I think it's important for the press and the public to know that the response is that there was no violation, and thus the body would not be taking any further action. At least that's the draft report to you.
Okay.
So you want a motion for us to
I'm-
write, correct?
Yes.
The chairman asked if you wanted to read it into the record, if
It's up to
someone
you.
wants that
I have no
done.
problem reading it.
You want to read it into record?
I mean, it's gonna go into the,
No, I'm not, I'm saying you want to read it into
I
record.
think it should be read into record.
Perfect.
I mean, what do you think?
I agree.
I
This should be
agree.
read into record.
Yeah.
Cameron, what do you think?
I'm comfortable with reading it.
And will copies be given to the press?
If they wish, or with, she's got a snappy iPhone, she's pretty good with it.
Yes, so I guess,
I guess that's a yes.
Okay, thank you. Just
Uh,
questions.
regarding complaint of June 16, 2017, dear Ms. Farrell, you have alleged that Mr. Cameron Foyt's, a selectman, violated the open meeting law when he posted a comment on your blog because his comments and quotations can be construed as representing the entire BOS, Board of Selectmen. The article was entitled Policies, Procedures, and Pins. Opined on various financial matters which comes before the advisory committee and adherence of the select board and town administrator to various select board policies and bylaws. We note that 3 members of the Templeton Advisory Board made comments on this article which preceded the comments posted by Mr. Foyt's. We know that you are a member of the Templeton Advisory Committee. The comments that Mr. Foyt's posted, in substance, was to advise the 3 commenters of your blog that these comments could be in a violation of the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, as it gives rise to a situation, in quotations, in which public body advisory committee is in deliberation of a matter, policies and procedures relevant to their positions involving a quorum of members, regarding Jeffrey Bennett, Julie Farrell, Billy Bartholomew, and Robert May. We shall leave to other determination of the merits of Mr. Foyt's comments. However, for the purpose of our response to your complaint, we consider the following. The open meeting law statute defines deliberation as an oral or written communication through a medium, including electronic mail, between or among a quorum of a public body of any public business within the jurisdiction. The Attorney General further advises that the open meeting law applies when members of a public body communicate in serial manner in order to evade application of the law. Finally, the Attorney General finally advises that the expression of an opinion on matters within the body of jurisdiction to a quorum of a public body is deliberation. Even if no other public body member responds, such a violation would occur if a member of a public body sends an email to a quorum of a public body expressing her opinion or his opinion on a matter that could come before that body, even if none of the recipients respond. In preparation this response, Mr. Foyt was asked if he had communicated his intent to post or subject the matter of his intent to post to any other members of the select board by any means, i.e. personal, telephone, electronic, or alike. He stated he had not. Although Mr. Foyt did sign his comment as your selectman, he did not represent in any manner that the spokesman for the Board of Selectmen. Although his typographical error may have given rise to the belief he was speaking on behalf of the entire board, he was not. Further, while some may not distinguish the difference and believe that the board member is representing the board as an entirety, whether they're speaking or do not believe this is to be true. Therefore, after consideration of the facts as we understand them, it is the opinion of this body that neither Mr. Foyt nor the body violated the open meeting law as alleged in the complaint and was declined to take any further action. Signed, soon to be signed, John Caplis, Cameron Foyt, Julie Richard, Doug Morrison, and Diane Haley Brooks. Thank you, sir. And you have the originals, Lisa?
We do it if it meets the board's pleasure, and we have it, can readily make any changes to the draft
I think
that the
it's
board
fine.
might desire.
I'll entertain a motion at this point.
I motion to approve the response to Miss Julie Farrell.
Okay, I have a motion for it to be approved in response to Miss Julie Farrell. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have motion and second. Any other discussion? I see none. Cameron?
Yes.
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Response to open meeting law complaint of Mr. May.
Mr. Chairman, this was before you prior, and you delegated to me the preparation of a response. Although it was not filed technically correct as an OML complaint, the board did concur at its last meeting that we would respond to it as such. Again, happy to answer any questions that you might have, but I think that it follows a similar pattern, and you may wish to read this into the record as well.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to read it out.
That'd be great. Any questions with Cameron reading it? No? Go ahead, Cameron.
Dear Mr. May, you have alleged that Mr. Cameron Forts, a selectman, violated a provision of the open meeting law, having failed to return an acknowledgement of receiving certain OML materials from the municipal clerk within the prescribed time frame and participating in the select board meeting of May 8th, 2017, prior to returning such acknowledgement. We have decided to respond to your complaint notwithstanding the fact that it has not been filed as required. 940 CMR and 2905. 1. All complaints shall be in writing using the form approved by the Attorney General. Or 3. The complaint shall also file a copy. The complaint shall also file a copy of the complaint with the municipal clerk, and the complaint shall be filed within 30 days of the alleged violation. Let us first review the requirements of Section 29.04, which is applicable to local public bodies. There are two parts to this section. The first is that a document shall be delivered by the municipal clerk to each member of the public body, whether elected or appointed upon taking the oath of office, and in every case before entering into performance of such office. The second part is that within 2 weeks after receipt of such materials, the member shall certify receipt of such materials. We note that there is no provision that would appear to bar a public official from exercising their duties during the 2-week period of time set forward between the delivery of the document and the acknowledgement of its receipt. With respects to the first requirement, the town clerk advised that Mr. Forts was sworn in office on May 2nd, 2017. At that time, she delivered to him the required document by electronic means. With respect to the second requirement, the town clerk advised that she did not receive the acknowledgement until May 18th, 2017. This is 2 days beyond the 14 days that are allowed. Thus, we find that Mr. Forts did violate the OML by failing to return the required acknowledgement within the 14 days allowed. However, we find the violation was unintentional. We make this finding because upon a review of electronic submission of May 2nd, 2017, there needs to be a correction there, from the town clerk to Mr. Forts, we do not find any language in it or upon the acknowledgement certificate that needs to be returned that would inform the recipient that they need to return the acknowledgement within 14 days. Finally, upon a review of the meeting calendar, we find that there were no board meetings which Mr. Forts participated in during the period of time in which he was in violation. In response to your complaint, after consideration of the facts as we understand them, we have asked the town clerk to modify our future transmissions of the document to be more clearly highlighted, 14-day filing requirement. Beyond that, we decline to take any action upon your complaint.
I would make a motion to approve and sign the letter by the board with one correction of the date that is incorrect on the page 2.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion, second. Any further discussion? I see none. Cameron?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
I'm sorry, what?
Are these
Yeah, the meeting minutes were part of the complaint.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Let me dig it up real quick.
Okay. Moving on. Are we good?
The next item, Mr. Chairman, is the board had had a draft of a complaint brought before it with respect to various violations of the open meeting law that were thought to occur amongst 4 members of the advisory committee. I was dispatched to review the materials and to prepare revisions that seemed appropriate.
Yes.
For the most part, I think it flows exactly with the draft, with 2 exceptions. The first is that it was just, 3 exceptions on this one. It was just set up a little bit more to establish the facts of who was a member of which committee and so forth. The second was to pull in the very specific comment and discussion on the bonds and the finances, which is clearly within the purview of the committee. And the third part was to speak to the matter of unintentional versus intentional. And in this case, I have drafted a complaint which, based upon the long history of public service of some of these individuals and their exposure to the open meeting law, could only appear to have been an intentional
Okay.
violation of the statute. Certainly, you have some time. You have 30 days from June 15. I would be happy to answer any questions. We do have certain space constraints within it. Happy to answer any questions. We can make any revisions. But if you find this meets what your desires were, the board would first need to decide that, if they feel that it's factually been presented appropriate, and if the action that's been requested meets with your intent, you would then need to decide whether to file it as a board or not. And if you do not, then the member that brought this before you can still file it as an individual.
Okay. And this is on the first one, correct? Yeah.
This is the first complaint, yes?
Gotcha. Okay.
Can I ask a logistical question?
Sure.
If we stated in the prior letter that Mr. Selectman Forts was not speaking for the board, and we're going to file this as a board? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well,
You can still do that, because Mr. Forts posted
Oh, and
a
that, because
comment,
he did, oh, okay.
which you are
as is.
saying
Yeah,
was not done as a board.
right.
Mr. Forts, that gave
I acted
rise
on
to
my
Mr.
own free
Forts'
will.
complaint before the board.
Oh, okay.
And you could file the complaint as a board if you wish, and I don't see those as
Okay.
being inconsistent.
No.
I motion for.
I second that.
For its entirety.
For its entirety to be submitted
Yeah.
to the advisory committee.
With what, Cameron?
I motion for this entire document to be submitted to the advisory committee in its entirety.
By the
as a-
board as a whole.
As an individual, as by.
As, well, as by the board.
And I have a second. Any other discussion? Would it be prudent to read the complaint?
I leave that to the body.
They were very similar to what we had read the other night. I don't, very minor edits and changes.
It's primarily by flow,
Yeah.
pulling the bond issue
Mhm.
in,
Okay.
and speaking to the matter of intent, providing some meat on those bones. But other than that, yes, it is essentially as you read the other night.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion concerning this complaint? To be sent as is to the chairman of the advisory committee.
So we're not going to read this one into record?
That's a decision for the body. It is
That's-
pretty consistent with what was
I'd
read
prefer to
in
read
the
it
other
into
evening.
record, because it is a little bit different,
That's fine.
so.
Yep. Do you want to read this one?
Yep, I am.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Julie Farrell is a member of the Templeton Advisory Committee. She maintains and has administrative control over a blog website referred to as Polly's Templeton Watch. On the 15th of June 2017, using the first person and signing it with her name, she posted a thread entitled Policies, Procedures, Pins, which commented upon various financial matters, lack of a bond rating, $5 million ban issued needs to be paid by December 1, the need to issue 20 million in bonds to pay for the school, etc. And the development and following of policy and procedures. The comments were on matters over which the advisory committee does and/or has expressed a strong desire to have a role in developing, commenting on, and reporting to the select board and town meeting. The 3 remaining named parties, Jeffrey Bennett, Robert May, and Ms. Beverly Bartolomeo, are all members of the same Templeton Advisory Committee. These persons all weighed in with comments on the thread regarding matters of the official business of the committee upon which they serve. These comments allowed for opinions to be shared amongst themselves and other viewing members of the advisory committee within the same thread, thus creating deliberation. There was no indication that there was to be a meeting, no agenda was posted, and no meeting minutes revealed. Ms. Farrell, Mr. Bennett, and Ms. Bartolomeo have had great exposure to the open meeting law. Given this and their lengthy public service, we consider their violation of the statute to be intentional. Given Mr. May's relatively short service, we do not believe his violation to be intentional. The Board of Selectmen requests that the advisory committee members submit a formal public apology to the citizens of Templeton, outlining their violation and committing to ceasing future activities of a similar nature in violation of the statute. The Board of Selectmen also requests that these individuals attend a formal training by the Attorney General's office regarding open meeting law within 6 months of the resolution of this matter.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other
Second.
discussion?
You already have it.
We already have it.
Second.
Can I jump on it? Oh my God.
Make sure it's there.
I got you. Any other discussion? I see none. Kim?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Concerning the second open meeting law complaint,
This had the same review. There was a minor setting it up just so that it flowed in terms of, clearly identifying membership on the committee of each person, talking about the linked comments, the carried over discussion. And then it was, with respect to the action that was requested, a little bit more speaking to the matter of perceived intent of the violation, continuing the discussion after having been noticed that the discussions very well could be violations of the open meeting law, and the addition of the request of one of the parties, such that the amended complaint now requests that all 4 members of the advisory committee resign their positions.
understood. Would you like to read this into record as well?
Well, I think most of it is the same as the previous, except for what Mr. Terenzini said, because it was carried over to another blog, and subsequently some of those posts were deleted, and commentary from other citizens were posting to that forum. This discussion was heavily moderated by deleting conflicting opinions and leveraging comments to directly influence advisory committee members' opinions. Once the individuals were notified already on the different blog that these discussions could very well be an open meeting law violation, the initial responses from Julie Farrell, Robert May, and Beverly Bartolomeo were hostile and expressed retaliating measures. These measures that were carried out were personal attacks and threatening repercussive actions against Selectman Cameron Forbes. Given the great exposure to the open meeting law, lengthy public service, and the notice these discussions could very well be a violation, we consider those to be intentional. The Board of Selectmen requests the resignation of Julie Farrell, Jeffrey Bennett, Robert May, and Beverly Bartolomeo for their negligence and intentional violation of open meeting law. This recommendation is based off initial response of notification by Selectman Forts of a complaint of the 3 individuals with harassments, threats, and intentional disregard for open meeting law and further dissemination of material.
Right. Okay.
Make a motion to submit the open meeting law
As a board?
as complaint as a board to the advisory committee.
Okay. I have a motion on a second.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion?
I would like to recommend an amendment for the last line, or actually the first line of the recommended action, where it says Robert May and Beverly Bartolomeo for their negligence. that should be gross negligence. As with the negligence, it indicates that there's, disregard for reasonable care, whereas this was blatant disregard for care, which would indicate gross negligence. And I think that would be a good distinction.
Did you hear that, Mr. Tenzini?
I do, and again, we have this, we might be able to get a couple of these this change made for you tonight. If not perhaps the vice chair could sign in your absence
That'd be great.
next Wednesday.
Yep.
Because we do have a little time on this one.
Okay.
I will amend my motion, I don't know why I say that, to reflect that
The change.
wording.
You got it.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
I don't know how serious these infractions are, and I don't know how the ethics board would consider their seriousness. But I can't help but remember last night's meeting with the DOR when they stressed so much the importance of working cooperatively amongst each of the boards and trying to get along. There were a number of subtle suggestions by them that we make a more cooperative effort to get along with all of the boards. There was even a less subtle comment made last night regarding that. A big step towards doing that would be if all parties could try to withdraw those complaints, try to consider working together. I'm sure that maybe the people in town, I've heard at least from a few people, they're getting very tired of this kind of bickering that occurs between the boards. I just wish there was some way we could work more cooperatively with everybody.
Chairman?
Yep, you're right. Yes, sir.
If I may. My job, what I do in the private sector is I am an auditor for ethics compliance and regulatory compliance. One of the big things that is taken very seriously in the private sector is following rules and regulations and ethical decisions. Now, this doesn't seem like a very big deal because open meeting law, when you look at a lot of the complaints on the Attorney General's office that have been filed for complaints, sometimes it's as simple as somebody taking recess and they step aside and they discuss something, which is how to conduct the meeting. And then they sit back down and somebody files an open meeting law complaint on that, when it's simply just pointing out how to operate as the board. But they're not really deliberating on business seriously. The seriousness of this would be that they are discussing matters that is relevant to their business behind closed doors with moderated discussion. And that's something that in transparent government shouldn't take place. And something that I've really wanted to bring to this was transparent government, was open government. And if we can't follow some of the basic rules that have been outlined for the last 50, 60 years in this state for open meeting laws to be followed and transparent government to be followed, what's to prevent any of this back and forth?
Regardless of how this works out, it's just going to probably create more animosity between all parties. So I'd like to see it resolved
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
amicably as possible.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, Kelly?
Well, I just had a question about the resignation of those 4 members. Is that a permanent thing? Is that now, they resign now and they get reappointed in a year, or is that a permanent? I just wondered that.
That's gonna be up to the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
We just do a recommendation, and they, based on the facts that we present to the Attorney General, they make the determination, Yes, sir.
Well, I just want to be clear on how this works, okay? You will file this with the chairman of the advisory committee.
Yes.
They will have an opportunity to review, prepare their response in whatever manner they choose to do that, and then they will provide you with a response. You may, whatever the response is, even if it's short of what you asked for, be satisfied with that response, at which point the
That's fine.
matter's done. If their response is not satisfactory to you, then you appeal to the Attorney
Attorney
General's
General, that's
office.
correct.
Sorry. I said-
Yes, Kelly?
I just wanted to address his comment about what I said last night. You know, I apologize how that came off, but you don't understand how horrible it is to work in that environment every day. And I have worked very hard to get us to this point, and I would hate to see things continue down this road and we get back to where we were. And the way things are going at this point, we're not moving forward. And it has to start moving forward. And, you know, I've had citizens call me today and thank me for what I said last night, because it's time that someone in the community stands up and says something, and not just sit back and let things, watch how things happen. You know, and I apologize, you know, if that offended you, but you don't work in the environment here every day and go through what the town employees go through. And it's every single one of us. I speak for all of us.
Thank you, Kelly. And we, as you were talking, we just so happened, they're still working on, they're not on this one, I don't think, yet. No, not yet. We received 4 additional open meeting law violations on Tuesday, that the town administrator has been working on. Again, what does that do? As Kelly says, what does that do? Well, in a nutshell, anybody can file a complaint. If there is a valid complaint, please, by all means, you know, if you need to file a complaint, file the complaint. Or you could, you know, write a message to the TA, or write a message to one of the Board of Selectmen members, write a memo to, you know, to whoever. But if you want to file a valid complaint, that's your prerogative. You can do that. You can file the complaint. But what's the end result of that? Well, that takes typically the one employee we have that handles that 2 days outside of not doing town business, but handling the complaint. So we have, and same with Kelly's perspective. I mean, we get these requests for, I don't know, pay sheets from like 2011. I'm like, why do we need pay sheets from 2011? I'm like, okay, but now we have to go downstairs. She's gonna take at least a day and a half of her time of not doing town business, but to do business of a complaint, which again, it might be valid. I'm not saying not to do it, but there's not enough time, and there's not enough employees here. It really takes away from doing town business by some of these complaints, and working together. You know, I've always been a huge supporter of working together. My personality is just that way, and it's just, you know, I don't know how this is going to transpire at this point. I mean, it makes me sick. Yes.
Yeah, can I ask how much time has the board spent discussing the debate on potentially filing an open meeting law complaint?
This board?
Yeah.
Well, we met last time and we met tonight.
Emergency meeting and tonight.
There was an emergency meeting.
Well,
There was no emergency
ad.
meeting.
Excuse me?
There was an ad.
There was an
Within
ad?
48 hours to the agenda.
I believe, based on the open meeting, I think we can add to the agenda that day.
Yeah.
It's not an emergency. I could just add because something else came up
Yeah.
that we needed to add to the
So
agenda.
it's what, 2 meetings?
There was 2 meetings, yep.
Yeah. Okay. Don't want to know.
Mr. May, could I please know what the intent of that question is? What do you mean, how much time is the board spent? We're
Because
only
this is
allowed to
so
speak in
biased.
public.
This is so biased, this entire event. Cameron's warning of intent was on chapter 30, section 19, which is based on bonds. At the bottom of his warning, he says, P.S. How is this for irony? Do you think there was an attitude there? No, there was no attitude there.
No, don't say
I
that.
basically said,
I just
I'm
wanted
sitting
to
there
know
like
what the intent of the
he's just
question was.
blabbing, is all he was doing
Okay.
the whole day.
Mr. May, hold on one second. Hold on one second.
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
Right, we don't need this.
Exactly,
Right.
right
Right.
here.
Okay, so let me say this. Mr. May,
Yes.
Cameron Foyt's has, you know, we deemed that there was some partial relevance, and we agreed that there was a violation made, that he obviously was not fully informed of, and that action has been taken forth. So what he said was handled by this board.
What he said,
Right.
you dealt with my complaint, I thought.
Excuse me?
I thought you just dealt with my complaint with him.
He's mixing them.
No, you're mixing them.
He's mixing.
You're mixing the complaint. The initial complaint, well, the other complaint with, that Mr. Foyt's made a comment or something like that, we did see that he did, go outside,
Yeah, but what I'm referring to
What are you
is
referring
his
to?
complaint against me, okay, his complaint against me. The wording,
the first one or the second one?
Oh, the second one is based on intent.
Okay,
The intent issue, if we wanna really get into this, Selectman Ford's warning was on chapter 30 for section 19, the warning.
are you talking, what are you talking about? Are you talking about,
It's in a hearing.
this isn't a hearing, what specific is your question?
My question?
Yes,
I already asked my question, I was just referring to what Kelly was saying, this bickering is bull.
all right, thank you. All right,
May I make a comment?
okay. Okay, option on,
Problems are a huge part of it too, Kelly.
Did we vote the second one?
I apologize for opening up the can of worms.
no, you didn't.
This
You didn't.
needed to be hashed out.
You didn't.
It's definitely
A
done.
long time
All
coming.
right, thank you. Memo to the TA regarding options to fill positions.
Did we vote the second?
Which one? Yeah, we did.
The second one?
No,
Uh,
we did not.
We didn't vote for the
No, we
second
did
one?
not
I don't
vote
think we
on
voted
this
the
one. We
second
just, I read it
I
out
believe we
loud.
did.
We get a motion and a second. Do any other
Who did the
discussion?
motion? I did.
Yeah, we voted,
We voted.
I thought.
For the first one, we did. I don't recall voting on this one.
Yeah, because you said you added gross.
Okay, so I made the motions, but I
it
don't
was seconded?
recall voting.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, made a motion, it was seconded by whom?
Added language,
Me.
right?
It was seconded by Julie. Any other discussion? Cameron?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you for catching that. Action on memo of TA regarding option to fill position.
So.
Mr. Tenzini?
Well, you'd asked me to prepare a memo on various options. I suggested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for your consideration.
Yep.
Several of them I
Oh, I got it.
recommended against for the reasons. Unfortunately, we were not able to have this discussion prior to Tuesday.
Yeah, we don't.
You have voted to create the subcommittee to explore the sharing. The question becomes whether or not you wish to pursue any of these other options at the same time as a safety valve, or whether you wish to conclude the exploration of the sharing option before returning to this matter. And I'm happy to answer any questions on any of the options or the
Right.
observations that I made on them.
No, it's good.
I make a motion that we move forward with the shared option and then revisit these later.
Okay, a motion of a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Excuse me? What is the position? What pos-
Now we're
The
moving,
TA.
just the TA, regarding the TA.
Regarding the TA? Yeah, motion second, any other
It just says
discussion?
position.
What's that?
So the agenda just says position, she was just asking which
Oh,
position.
which position, I got you. Any other discussion?
Question?
Yes, Will.
The options, can we understand what they are?
No.
Can they be read? That'd be a good understanding for the folks to understand. We have options.
Well, I mean, we've been through a lot of these options already.
If we would've discussed this on Monday, that would've
I don't
been
know,
long.
I don't understand why Mr. Spring doesn't run for the select board.
I don't wanna muddy the water. We voted to move forward with the shared, and now.
All right, stop, please,
They can be asked to leave, you know.
just stop.
They're speaking out of turn.
Okay,
This is a disgrace, just so you know.
thank you, Mr. May.
Guys are not. We did.
I got it,
That was.
I got it.
That was
Okay, I got it.
terrible. Now, if this was on the blog, maybe we could do something about it.
Okay, you know what?
You know what, you
But
should
just
ask her
stop,
to leave.
just
I'm
stop.
sorry.
No, just
Mr.
stop.
sorry,
Kaplan,
thinking-
permission to speak.
Yes,
So, I've been to several meetings, and this, since the last meeting, has dismayed me greatly. Please do not, I would appreciate, like, not the comments, but what we get every day for emails and are rude and disparaging and demeaning every single day. So although we can continue because we are opening, when everybody comes to these meetings, amen. There are rude comments that are made on blogs and in person. Mr. Terenzini has been treated rudely by the advisory committee while I was there. I cannot believe that he didn't walk out and leave. It does not matter. We do not have to like one another, but I can no longer sit in this seat and just be a part of something that is not even Templeton any longer. You can shake your head and you can roll your eyes and you can do whatever. And we accept all of that. We just have to sit here and take it. It's not right. Our town administrator, interim or whatever, is there to be respected. He is the top dog, so to speak. Oh, please quote me on that. And that we take, and the employees take direction from him. This is just not right any longer. Public comments should be reserved for either the beginning or the end of a meeting. We are trying to conduct business and we can't. I love the public commentary, but this is just out of control.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, John.
That's
I
okay.
just can't any longer. I go home like heartbroken every day. Please quote me on that too.
Okay, town webs, actually, we're gonna,
I also need to make another recommendation, and forgive me, Mr. Forts, you put a lot of time into doing some research, but because we were not able to review,
I've
your,
actually-
I would like to
Wait, wait, wait,
table
wait.
them.
Well, I
I'm
hate to cut you
sorry.
off. I want a motion for a recess, and let's reconvene at a separate time. I think that would probably be in our best interest, is to recess.
If-
Let
is it
everybody
good to
cool off,
recess, or
and then
we
we
do it
can
at a
conduct
work
business without a motion.
I'll second that motion.
okay, I have a motion on the table to recess in a second. Any other discussion concerning that?
I don't, if we recess it, then we have to,
Doesn't matter.
We can come back in 10
I
minutes.
think it,
We can recess for 10 minutes, just to get
oh,
everybody's head
taking a
together.
recess.
Taking a
No, he's
recess.
saying recess to another date.
No, no, just for
No,
10
he's
minutes.
not.
To another time, as in 10, 15, 20,
10
whatever,
minutes.
whatever we want. I'm just saying
A
we
10-minute
definitely need
recess.
a cool off
A
period.
10-minute recess.
So
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I wanna go home too. No. No. Cameron?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
I did this one.
Diane?
No.
Yes. Doug?
No, I think we should just continue. We're close to the end and.
I'm gonna vote yes as well. We're gonna take a 10-minute recess, so we'll be back.